There can be numerous reasons for someone in Michigan to potentially have their wages garnished. But do you have any options to stop it? Well, depending on your situation, you actually may be put into a financial hardship with the garnishment. And so, for example, let's say someone in Michigan there has the minimum wage of $9.87 an hour. And now their wages are being garnished for a $25,000 debt. That may be putting them to a spot where they may need to be considering a bankruptcy. And so that's what we're going to cover today, your different options. Welcome to the Ascend Finance YouTube channel, where we cover wage garnishment in Michigan and help folks understand their options to resolve it. With that said, everyone's situation is unique, and that's why we built a free Michigan wage garnishment calculator to help folks see what their options are, the way to stop it, the costs and pros and cons, and to estimate their cost based on your specific data. My name is Justin, and I am one of the analysts here at Ascend. I speak with quite a few folks who are unfortunately facing a garnishment, and so I'd love to help equip you with the process and options. In today's video, we're going to cover a few things. First, the different options to stop a garnishment. Second, Michigan wage garnishment laws. Third, wage garnishment process in Michigan. The steps to finding out who could be garnishing your wages. And then finally, I want to end it with which option should you do. Now, before I dive into the different ways to stop a garnishment in Michigan, I wanted to say if this video ends up being helpful, please leave a like, as it's always encouraging for us to see. Also, if you'd like to see more videos like this covering wage garnishment and options to resolve debt in Michigan, feel free to subscribe as we try to put out new videos weekly. Now let's get started. So we understand that you may be feeling overwhelmed, and one of the most important things is understanding how to stop it, as it may be debilitating. And so we built a Michigan wage garnishment calculator to help you understand either A, how much you may be garnished, B, if you're currently being garnished, determining whether that's actually the correct amount coming out of your paycheck. And finally, we want to help you understand the different options to stop a garnishment there. So when it comes to stopping a garnishment, unfortunately, there are a limited number of options, as at this point, the courts has already issued an order for an unpaid debt. However, there are options to consider, so I want to dive into those now. First one, filing potentially a bankruptcy. So one option to stop a garnishment is filing a bankruptcy. There is the liquidation bankruptcy known as Chapter 7, which can potentially provide immediate relief from a garnishment and any other unsecured debt you may have. But in order to file a Chapter 7 in Michigan, you need to pass the Chapter 7 means test. There are income requirements based on your household size, so I'll show on screen now what the current income limits are for a Chapter 7 bankruptcy in Michigan. And so you can see on screen there, based on the household size, the household gets larger, so does the income threshold. And so if you're looking at it and you're seeing that you're either above it, or if you are not sure if you passed the means test because you're just below it, well, you can also take our free Chapter 7 bankruptcy calculator. It has the most up-to-date figures for the means test, and it also will help estimate your qualification and cost. The idea behind the calculator is that it will help you estimate whether you'll be able to qualify, and then based on your zip code, what the cost would look like. So we want you to be able to see the results without any friction, and so you don't even need to put an email address in to see your results. Now, the Chapter 7 filing fee in Michigan is $338. But you may actually be entitled to have it waived if you're under the fee poverty guidelines. And so I'm going to put that on the screen as well so you can take a look. Now, if bankruptcy doesn't make sense to file, or if you're looking for an option before that, you could potentially try to file an exemption through the court. The way to do this is you may be able to just reach out to the local courthouse and see if you may be eligible for any potential exemptions. That could look like being eligible to file a head of household exemption, which may be able to limit how much they're able to withhold from your paycheck. Now, with that said, I do want to help understand what the Michigan wage garnishment laws are. In Michigan, there should be a limit on the amount of earnings that can be withheld from a single paycheck. Now, it does depend on the state, but most times it's just based on disposable earnings. I'm going to actually just put in the description what the wage garnishment amount in Michigan looks like, as it can be a little complex. So I'm going to put it into the description here where you can look at the article and it kind of gives you an idea and a breakdown of what the laws look like for that. So now that we've covered the garnishment laws and I've at least pointed in the direction where to find that, I want to help you understand the steps and the process behind a wage garnishment. Now, when it comes to a wage garnishment, the actual process of it really depends on the type of debt actually being collected, as there's actually potentially specific procedures for garnishing someone's wages for, child support or spousal support, virtually compared to maybe like credit card debt. So with that all said, though, the process is generally similar across the board for collecting unpaid unsecured debt. So let's kind of get into what the process looks like for reaching at, a wage garnishment for something like that. Now, the first thing they're going to have to do is most likely obtain a judgment against you. And so wage garnishments don't happen overnight, right? And so fortunately, there are checks and balances put in place to protect both the debtor and the creditor from doing anything with ill intent. So if you are facing a garnishment from, let's say, the federal government, maybe for like an unpaid student debt, the process may look a bit different, as they may not need to actually have a court order to withhold your earnings, but nevertheless, let's focus on, regular traditional unsecured debt. So the first step to obtaining a judgment is through a debt collection lawsuit. So the creditor will need to properly serve you for any unpaid unsecured debt. So that's going to probably include credit cards, medical bills, and personal loans, payday loans, of course, and things of that nature. So once you've received the summons, you should see a few things. First, the facts of the case, right? And so you should see a summary of the law, the description of the debt, and the exact amount that you owe. And so most times you should actually have about 30 days to respond, but it should state what that is on the summons. Now, let's say, the creditor has enough documentation provide sufficient proof, right? And so they have enough proof that you owe the debt. The court now may issue a default judgment. So with the judgment, though, the creditor now has the choice to whether they want to pursue further legal action by maybe requesting a wage garnishment order. So that is the next step here in the process, is actually obtaining a wage garnishment order. So now that we've actually touched on what it looks like to obtain a judgment, I want to kind of go through what the next step of it looks like and kind of what it looks like to obtain a wage garnishment order. So as I just alluded to, with the judgment, the creditor is now able to potentially request a wage garnishment order. So here's what that looks like. The first thing is the creditor is going to request a writ of execution from the court. The next thing is there's going to be a garnishment packet served to your employer. Now, once the employer has received the garnishment packet, you may actually start to see your wages being garnished, probably, in the first paycheck you've received 10 days after the service. So once your employer has received the garnishment packet, you may actually start to see your wages being garnished in the first paycheck you receive. That's about 10 days after the date of being served. And so your employer may need to provide you with a copy of the garnishment order. And so you should be able to challenge this order, but you may only have around 10 days to ask for any potential exemptions. Now, sometimes folks are not even aware that they are being garnished, who's garnishing, or what the balance is for, and for many, many reasons, unfortunately. So before I go too much further, I want to help you figure out where to go if you either don't know who's garnished your wages or you're not sure the balance they're garnishing you for. I've actually spoken with more and more folks who have unfortunately been caught off guard by a recent garnishment from their wages. Most times they're first hearing about it from being notified by their employer, or they just noticed a portion of their paycheck was being taken out. And so if you do fall into this category, I want to help you understand a few simple steps that may help you actually answer those questions and get a little bit more understanding. Of course, if you already know who's garnishing your wages and the total balance, feel free to skip to the next part here, more covering your options to resolve it as well that I touched on earlier. But if you don't know who's garnishing your wages or what the balance is, here are some steps to take if you need more information. So one step could be, it's depending on everyone's situation, but one step could be reaching out to payroll and seeing if they have any information on who submitted the garnishment order. Most likely them or someone within your employer has information or the documents that they were served. Now, once you know who is garnishing your wages, you should be able to call them directly to get the information on the balance. So once you have an idea of the law firm that's handling the account, you could potentially reach out to them and get an idea of the balance, when it started, how much they want, if there's any offers to resolve. Or if that doesn't work for any reason, you could potentially reach out to the courthouse and see if they're able to look up your case. If you call the local courthouse, they may have the case information regarding the judgment and the garnishment issued. Of course, there's no promises on any of these, but those could be options to explore. Now, if both of those options don't work, you may be able to check your credit report and see if there's any outstanding debts that it may be in relation to. So if you have a medical bill from 4 years ago that is in collections and you haven't paid on it and your wages are being garnished and you look in the credit report and you see there's a medical bill in collections, well, it could be that. But, those are things to check out. Now, the multiple question here is, which options should you do? Now, with all that to say, ultimately it's up to you. However, I would encourage you to take our wage garnishment calculator, as that'll help you compare your options, the cost, the pros and cons to handling a potential garnishment. As I do understand that it can be overwhelming, you're always welcome to give us a call or text at 833-272-3631, and we'd be happy to chat through your situation. I do hope that this video was helpful, but if you do have any questions at all, feel free to leave a comment down below, as I am sure there are others with a similar question. We will do our best to get back to you as soon as possible. However, thanks so much for watching, and I'm always here if you have any questions.